Welcome to the Owl's Edge, where smart gets wise. I'm your host, Susan Black-Beth, founder and managing partner of Auspicious Owl Group. On the Owl's Edge, we'll be bringing conversations, insights, and learnings about franchising and private equity out from behind closed doors and turn hard-earned experiences into your competitive advantage. Thanks for joining me. Let's swoop in and get wise. Welcome back to Aviary Studios. I'm your host, Susan Black-Beth, and this is The Owl's Edge. I am joined today by one of my longest running franchise friends, James Young. James has built one of the most quietly remarkable leadership careers in franchising. He got his start at Verlo Mattress, helping grow the brand from 20 million to 50 million. He then led a telecom franchise concept that scaled to 120 units in just 15 months before the Canadian parent company fell into bankruptcy. At 31 years old, with a young family at home, he picked himself up, took his hard-won education in what franchising looks like when it goes wrong, and moved into the role that has shaped him into the leader he is today. James joined Spring Green Enterprises in 2004, earned the president title by 2006, and spent the next 20 plus years helping a mature, family-owned franchise evolve into a multi-brand platform with the strategic acquisition of Pet Butler in 2017. Over the years, James led the build-out of one of the most sophisticated marketing and technology systems in the home services franchise space. Throughout the Spring Green journey, he played a central role in architecting one of the cleanest succession stories by helping founder Tom Hofer transition the company to his son Ted in what will certainly be a model others use for guidance in the future. Welcome, James.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that warm introduction.
Yeah, you got it. Well, we're actually going to record today instead of just getting to sit and have breakfast and chat about all things franchising that you and I normally do. But I want to just take a second and thank you for 25 years of friendship and guidance and raising our families alongside of each other, and for being the guy that I always know I can call that will just shoot me straight and then help battle me to a better outcome. I just really appreciate that about you and about our friendship.
Well, what a journey it's been, huh?
Well, if you put on your 20-year family business leading hat, like what is something that you know about the importance of franchisee health in a system that a traditional maybe 5-year hold private equity investor just may not know about how important that is?
Yeah, well, the PE guys come in with pretty good diligence lists, right? So they know what they want to know. And everybody talks about unit level economics, right? That's kind of the target. But in small businesses, small franchisors, and even small franchisees, a lot of times the franchisee financial submissions, they may not have good compliance on getting the data in. And if the data does come in, it's kind of garbage in. And so there's this huge necessity, especially for businesses looking to exit, to really clean up the unit level P&Ls and make a strong concerted effort. Through the years, when I've been with smaller or just different stages, certainly, Spring Green being a mature brand, founded in 1977, over 100 million in revenue. Those AUVs are 2 million plus. The reality is a lot of emerging brands or younger brands, immature brands, aren't going to have that sophistication and really need to prepare for that. But I think the PE guys kind of have to understand that that's not just normal to walk into something that's, smaller and have that financial compliance. And really, a lot of it comes down to burdening the franchise owner with another operational expense, right? So we can mandate things through our agreements, like using an accountant that's recommended by us. We obviously have compliance levers that we could pull to get reporting in. But if it's going to cost the franchise owner, $300-400 a month, and the business is only generating $200,000 in revenue, that's, so when guys come in, just kind of understanding that, hey, that particular thing can be a bit of a challenge in some cases, I think. And I think of that as being the lead indicator of financial health. Does the model make money? Okay, now can we validate that with existing P&Ls? And how many of those PLs, can we categorize those P&Ls by rev size or whatever it is, and have a good sense of like where these businesses make money, how many guys are struggling, how many guys are at break even or above, and then how many guys are actually generating the income that is going to be attractive enough for both PE and future franchise prospects. So I think there's a big opportunity there for sure. And then it's kind of your basic humanality, where we get into the relationship side of things. And I think the people between that are critical. So that leadership group that the senior executive team might be working with, and the people that are in that room, and then obviously the data points between the financial health and being able to say, hey, this is how we're competing against the model. Maybe with inflation, we're seeing gas prices, good example. Well, if I can go to them and say, look, here's where we see the impact to the overall franchisee's bottom line. And then let's talk about, should we be doing a mid-year price increase? There might be some advocates for gas surcharges and things like that. Can our technology stack even handle it? Well, we only get into all of those conversations when we have those two components together. We have a good understanding of our financials and our unit level economics, and we have a good anecdotal sense of what franchisee pain is and where they would like us to prioritize our focus. And if we can bring that into a community of leaders, that's the value, the collective knowledge of franchising, where we win.
And I want to define some of the terms that you used. You said NAC and FAC. So define those two acronyms for folks.
Yeah, so Franchise Advisory Council or National Advisory Committees, committees and councils, those are typically elected. As a brand gets bigger, they will have a formal NAC or FAC, and that can be done a variety of ways, primarily through elections. You'll have bylaws. They are advisory in nature, but they are a great mechanism for you to stay engaged with your franchise owners, because initially you're one-to-one to one-to-one, and then you become one-to-many.
So I want to come back to the fact that I am seeing more and more franchisors, typically non-food, start franchising with very little corporate presence. Maybe it's just one unit, and then somebody counseled them that it'd be the perfect time to start franchising when you only have one corporate store. Could you talk about your experience over the breadth of your career? It doesn't have to just be Spring Green, but your breadth of experience on the power of having those company centers to draw from.
Yeah, well, different stages of growth can maybe make the importance or the rationale of why those company centers are so significant. In emerging, it's not uncommon to come in and say, hey, your EBITDA contribution is more significant from your company centers because your royalty hasn't accelerated fast enough and you're spending a tremendous amount of money to provide the support. So little chicken and the egg.
Yep.
As you get more mature, yeah, unless you have a specific strategy, certainly somebody who's had to deal with this would argue, hey, it's two different focuses. And so we don't want to be in company centers once we reach a level of maturity. So for me, not only do I lean on our company centers for training, for new franchise owner training, so I don't have to have this huge, robust staff as an emerging brand, but I also I test a lot of really bad ideas, and every once in a while I get lucky, and it's a good idea, and then we'll bring it forward maybe into the advisory council and say, hey, we're thinking about creating a pilot group, and here's the why. Traditionally those people are a little more progressive minded, and so we'll get some early adopters, and then we'll try to put some teeth into it and see if it's something that we can roll out system-wide. And at Pet Butler, we did something similar when we bought that brand. It was kind of a residential pet waste removal, we scoop poop only brand. But one of the things that was very attractive was I thought, well, Pet Butler could be a lot of things. So I had more opportunity to expand the line of services there. And we took that brand, we changed that positioning to be serving pets and their people. But we tested a lot of bad ideas to get to pet care, which pet care for us is dog walking, pet sitting. But now that brand's position is a concierge pet services, which now includes residential and commercial pet waste removal, as well as pet care, dog walking, and pet sitting. And those are the evolutions that we need to figure out, because today's model is not the same model 10 years from now. But I think the franchisor's responsibility is to continuously be testing all of the ideas, good and bad, and constantly looking around, down the road, around the corner, whatever your analogy is. That's my job as a franchisor. I don't want my franchisees just innovating randomly. I would like that channeled back through us to say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's create a pilot program, or let's run that through our company center, and let's put some teeth to this thing and see if it gets some traction. Then it makes sense. But if you don't have that outlet, I think it can be very challenging.
Yeah, in the family business, we always thought about, before we rolled out something to our franchisees, we wanted 90 to 95% of the bugs to be worked out right before it went in. And we did that in our company stores. And so very similarly held.
The reality is, you come into a franchise organization, you have to expect it's going to change. And I can't show you the crystal ball today to tell you if I'm going to be in 3 other services within the next 10 years. You have to trust that we will do it in an environment to prove the case. We will do it through the lens of how it impacts your unit level profitability, right? We will leverage our advisory councils and pilot programs before it becomes something that has to be adopted mainstream. But count on the fact that I will continually be pushing that issue, because we need to prepare. At the same time, I'm constantly looking for, well, what else can I do? If I'm going to be short on leads this year, because it's just the way it is between inflation and generative AI and increased competition, the dollar's not going as far to generate as much as we want. So what else can we do? Are there new channels? Is it streaming television? Is it, digital door knocking? There's some interesting concepts there. Like, are there things that we can do? And so I'll do that, often leveraging our company centers. And in some cases, I'll take that to a pilot group, or in some cases, we'll leverage our national ad fund and say, look, we're just going to run a test program here and see if we can't generate some additional leads and sales.
I would like to talk about, in your mind's eye, the distinction between awarding a new unit and selling a new unit. Like, what's the mindset for you there?
Yeah, well, I've done both. I think most people in development or leadership have, and when you're selling, and when you're awarding. I think it's just challenging in some cases to hit your franchise sales goals and not step into that sales approach. I think Godfred Otute, one of my mentors, was fortunate to have consult with me for a bit. And Godfred had this great slide where he had a locomotive kind of backing up to the cart. And he said, if you think anything other than a franchisee is hooking their car to your locomotive and they expect you to pull them up the hill, you're crazy. That's exactly what they hear. And you could have an awards process, you could have a qualification process, but at the end of the day, they are limiting their risk by hooking up their train car to your locomotive, and they're expecting you to drive them. And if you go in remembering that in your awards process, then you can be very confident to say, look, I need you to fully understand what your role is going to be in this business. Or you better be very clear on those expectations during your awards process. And it's a much easier conversation to say, hey, it looks to me, franchise health score, we look at a lot of data, but we also look at activity. If you're not posting socially, if you're not doing community events, if your days to lead conversion is high, I could see all of those data points. When I go back to the franchise owner and maybe they're not happy with success, or we're not happy with the performance, we could say, hey, look, we talked about this. Not only did you hear it in your sales process, but we trained on it, and now we're coming back to it. So I think to have that consistency in and truly make an award is ideal. But even if it's a sales process, you still want to make sure that you anchor them in the things that you know have the potential to be challenges down the road so that you can come back to it.
At Spring Green, you and your team have built an incredibly powerful marketing engine, incredibly sophisticated. From your perspective, knowing what you know about so many other brands as well, where's an area that the rest of us may be under investing in marketing?
Data. When we started to say, hey, look, we're going to take our database and our database marketing tactics more seriously, and we invested in that, that was a huge, huge win for us. So in both brands, we start with like property addresses, right? So you have a territory, it's defined, you buy that address. And then as you interact with that address from a marketing standpoint, you're basically retaining the knowledge of the interactions. So a good example is you start with an address list and you're like, well, does anybody own a dog? Is that an attribute we can buy? Well, you can, but it's probably 15% of the market, and maybe there's 50 to 60% dog ownership. So it's not the end all. Hey, they got a dog. Let's spend our marketing dollars there. But as a tactic, we'll do that. We'll also use active customers. On both brands, we have regional models that we use that basically tell us and score our active customers against our prospect universe and say like, hey, if these are the most likely people to use your services. And then we can take that data and we can use it through multiple channels, right? And so when we started investing back in that data, that's when we started to see that success. And it's not just in direct mail, it could be used in digital as well. We could be more competitive if we actually measured out. So we went and created some tech over a Google overlay. Now this is old tech today, but at the time it was pretty awesome.
Cutting edge.
Yeah, it was cutting edge, right? And the idea was that now when I marketed to that audience that I had identified as likely to use me, I could take a priced proposal to them. And I eliminated the two-step process. So the old days, we'd send out an offer, someone would request a quote, the franchisee would get the information. It may or may not sit in the inbox for a while. Mm-hmm. It may get run because operationally they're pretty efficient because they're out doing lawns. Hey, I'll run that estimate. But then it would have to come back in-house for an inbound call from an office person to follow up and see if they could close the sale. And that's where things really just fell short. So by adding this attribute of the lawn measurement, whatever we mailed out or marketed to was all working off the same price table. And we essentially cut out the franchisee from having to run quotes. And we created that inbound call center so when they called us, we could look up the record, know exactly what we sent them, and continue to invest in your first-party data. That may include buying a lot of third-party data, but the more you invest in the database, the stronger your marketing returns and the more predictability that you will have.
And that, folks, is a masterclass in one of the tactics that you use when you grow a mature system from $20 million in system-wide sales to, are you at 100 now? I can't remember.
Yeah, 120. Right? I think 120 this year for sure.
I mean, congrats. I mean, it's just awesome. And like I said, it's one of the tactics, right? There's a whole bunch of pieces to our puzzles when we're trying to build and improve and evolve these businesses. But that's definitely one of them. Swap over to being part of Tom's succession plan. Tom Hofer, founder of Spring Green, someone who I know you just think the world of and respect, as do I, and his family and all you guys have achieved together. But for those founders who may be thinking about succession plan, what's from your experience, what's a must do? Like, what do they have to be thinking about as part of their succession plan?
We had a lot of really good conversations about what he was building it for and what were some milestones that he wanted to set and achieve. And one of those was around, did he want his children in the business? And they weren't currently in the business. They had been around it in other businesses that were supported by his. But we put together a succession plan. And, that was pretty unique for me. Just having those honest conversations with the founder, having him pencil something out so it was written, didn't mean it was in black ink that couldn't change. but at least it was written that we could go back and reference because there will be some ebb and flow. And then it's really just, like most things, if you're finding success, it makes it a lot easier. When you're not finding success, everything gets challenged a little bit more. I think I was just very fortunate that we are able to find some success and continue to build. And that was really how I got in the role to begin with.
What's something that you're seeing in franchising right now that concerns you?
Well, I think that the topic that's always out there right now is the semi-absentee ownership. And, I think there's a good debate there on if people's model really can support that. When we talked about that direct to consumer marketing and the franchisor driving that, we talk about call centers, we talk about marketing implementation. I think it's possible, but if it's about throwing up a couple units, hiring a manager, and saying, "Hey, you put your money in the machine and it all works," boy, I think that there's some challenges with that right now. And so, what's happening though is, in order to get the unit economics in these models, they're selling multiples or development agreements. So people are buying into this idea of, hey, if I have 3 locations or multiple facilities or multiple territories, it's going to work better, it's faster, and I don't have to get in the middle of it. And so they're writing bigger checks with the idea that it's going to support that manager in the center of it. I think there's absolutely business models that can do this. I just worry about the consumer that's maybe biting into something that isn't really proven yet, or set up by design to have that owner that maybe maintains their job or has flexibility in a career, but isn't going to be full-time in the business. So I do worry about that because people just generally make more money. It costs more money to maintain their lifestyle. And so people often aren't willing to step down their lifestyle to step into a business. They want to come into a business and replace their income and maintain their lifestyle. And I think that's a trend that is a little bit challenging as well right now.
As you think about next chapters for James Young, thinking 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, what is a green flag? What's something that you're genuinely excited about around the franchise space?
Well, what's intriguing to me is this private equity involvement, both at the franchisor level and at the franchisee level. Right, we're seeing more and more of that. I get calls all the time looking for referrals on operators that might run a 25 location franchise. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. A, that somebody has 25 locations, and B, they're hiring executive leadership and PEs involved.
Right.
So, that could be a red flag. It could be a green flag. I think it's very interesting to me on the evolution of this. When we go into franchising, we're really just a collection of family-owned businesses, right? So we sell franchises to people and we change their lives. And in some cases, their lives have the same challenges we have in our lives, whether it's our kids or aging parents or death. And so when you think about that, as you look at private equity coming in, I worry a little bit about well, how do they view that kind of stuff? Because they're not going to have as much empathy. They're not going to be emotionally attached to the brand. And I think that they're not going to have the empathy that a founder or someone who operates company centers and has walked in their shoes is necessarily going to have. And so does it change the why people get into franchising? Does it become more a numbers and output game and more of hey, I want to put my money in the machine and get this return as an investment thesis versus a lifestyle and a return on that investment? I'm very excited about family offices. I think that they're very interesting to me about being a hybrid between that kind of hardcore numbers oriented return. And not all PE is the same. So that's not fair to categorize them that way. But I would say traditionally these family offices are much more like founders. They've probably succeeded somewhere in their career, and that's where a bulk of their funding comes from. And so they're still engaged in the selection of the businesses. Now, they may have a good team assembled, but it's not a dedicated fund with committed returns and expectations from investors. It is hey, we could hold this forever, or we could but we want to be excited about we want to be excited about what we invest in, and we want to be passionate around the business and let it breathe, and give it what it needs. And so they look to leaders like myself or you to come in and kind of bridge that. And I think it gives us a little more flexibility, than maybe the traditional PE.
I'm also excited to see how the ESOP world evolves related to franchising. I think there's going to be, stay tuned. I think there's going to be a bigger play for ESOPs in this world too. Okay, rapid fire. One question every franchisee should ask before they sign.
Oh, I think going back to just understanding your role in the business. What does the franchisor do and what do they not do? And being really understanding of what they're supposed to, what's going to make this business successful as an owner that I need to do and be comfortable doing.
Most undervalued metric in a franchise system?
Well, revenue wins. But right now, I would say your cost per lead and your conversion rate on sales. Now, there's a whole world behind how to get to those numbers, of course, depending on the business you're in. But we're seeing rising acquisition costs. And so that is problematic. And of course, the other side of that is retention, right? So in a business like mine with recurring revenue, it's one thing to get the customer, even if they're a little more expensive in the current environment, which they are. Can I retain that customer longer? Can I sell additional services too? So that's more than one KPI, but it never is one KPI, unfortunately.
And for those who aren't familiar, KPI is key performance indicator. All right. What's one thing not on your resume that you're really proud of?
Oh, I got a great story. So I didn't go to college right away. And I went to work for my brother in the mattress business. And that was a great life lesson for me. I came back and said, I want to go to college. I knew what I want to do. I want to go into marketing. And so I took that gap year, I think they call it today. I got thrown out of the house. That was my gap year. A little different than we raise our children. We send ours to France and say, look at, go backpack.
It's a gap year.
Yeah. So I came back and I needed a job. It was one of these like sales jobs. And the featured product was big button calculators, like the solar and the large panel, big display. Yeah. And you basically got a box of these or multiple boxes. You put them in your car and you went wherever you wanted to go and you tried to sell these. And so I sold the most calculators for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, right? And so they gave you a little margin. They were like, hey, look, you could sell them for whatever price you want, but here's the cost and here's how you make money. So I was like the top calculator sales guy. So the end of the story is inevitably they changed the product. And that day was my last day because they said, hey, we're going to sell steak knives. And I said, yeah, I can't do that. That was it. So that did not make my resume, but I do think it made an impact on me in my career because I always say if you could sell big button calculators to random people, I mean, what can you do, right?
Things I never thought I was going to say
you
today.
Don't even know that
big
story,
button calculator.
Yeah, you don't even know that story.
No, I don't know that story at all. That's amazing. And thank you for this time that you spent just helping people learn. I really appreciate it. This is Susan and James signing off from Aviary Studios and the Owl's Edge podcast. Have a super week.
Thanks for joining me on the Owl's Edge. If you found this conversation enlightening, please share it with others who influence outcomes for franchise stakeholders. To explore more on the topics of franchising and private equity, visit us at auspiciousowlgroup.com and be sure to follow the Owl's Edge wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, be smart, be wise.